One prediction you were happy to make, confident to make, I would say. Oh dear, I don't like the sound of that. Was that you think there will be more? You thought then there would be more non-Conservative and Labour MPs than ever before in the House of Commons. Still feel like that?
Well, there might still be, but I grant you that it's not looking as bright as it once did, not least primarily because of the position of the Democrats. I mean, in Scotland, the polling evidence that we have is indeed that the SNP are likely to make gains. Maybe not quite so many as they once thought. They might make because the Conservatives at least have recovered their position to some degree up here. But even so, an increase in SNP MPs to somewhere between 40, 42, 43 still seems to be quite possible. I think we expect Karen Lucas to hang on to her seat. We expect the Welsh Nationalists still to have at least 4 seats. So the crucial question will be how well the Liberal Democrats do. To give you some idea, the record number of third-party MPs is 88. If you were to take the polls at the moment and make some simple assumptions about what they might mean, we might be slightly below that figure. We might be 82. So much, frankly, simply will now depend as to whether or not the Liberal Democrats do slightly better in terms of seats than we are expecting or not. But certainly the decline of the Liberal Democrats is the one reason why that prediction doesn't look quite so good now as it did 4 weeks ago.
And if you had one, what was your first thought on hearing about these Brexit Party MEP resignations?
Well, I think the truth is that most of the juice has already been squeezed out of the Brexit Party orange by the Conservative Party. Even before today's announcement, only 6% of Leave voters said that they were going to vote for the Brexit Party. The party's support only stands at 3% in the polls. It's not now much above what UKIP managed 2 years ago. So it's not entirely clear that there is much more left to gather, and indeed that position has been relatively stable now for about the last couple of weeks or so. So maybe what's left will go, but frankly there isn't much left to go in the first place.
It's interesting because I had a call just 5-10 minutes ago from a woman who is campaigning for the Brexit Party, canvassing in the northeast of England, and if we take her at her word, and we should take her at her word, she said, I am getting huge support still in this part of the country, people who cannot vote Labour because of Jeremy Corbyn and will not vote Conservative because they're Conservative, and these are Leave voters, have heavily Leave voting areas, and they're still with the Brexit Party.
Yeah, well, I mean, sure. I mean, given that the Brexit Party is not standing in half the constituencies, it's got 6% of the Leave vote, then sure, the Brexit Party must still be picking up a non-trivial share of the vote. But in truth, the idea that people are not willing to go from Labour to the Conservatives, I'm afraid the polls do rather belie that statistic. One of Labour's fundamental problems now is that actually the proportion of people who voted Labour in 2017 who've switched not to the Brexit Party, because there aren't that many of them left across the country as a whole, but have switched to the Conservatives, that figure has not diminished during the campaign. It's just under 1 in 10 of Labour voters. So sure, the Brexit Party may be doing some damage, but at the moment, frankly, the Conservative Party is doing quite enough damage to the Labour Party on its own without Nigel Farage taking more votes away at Jeremy Corbyn's expense.
And let's talk about those who still support Remain or hope for an opportunity to have a second referendum. Yeah. If the Conservatives have squeezed all of the Leave votes that they can, the Remain votes will be looking at Labour and Lib Dem, presumably.
Yeah, sure, and the SNP in Scotland.
Yes.
We've got around just under 80% of Remain voters, people who voted Remain in 2016, saying they're going to vote for one of the parties that's in favour of a second referendum. I mean, how people are going to vote in this election is quite closely aligned to their views about Brexit, but whereas the Conservative Party, now has 70% of the Leave vote, the Labour Party, although it has made progress at the expense of the Democrats, that's been the principal source of Labour's improvement in its poll position in the polls during the last 4 weeks. There's still just under a quarter of the Remain vote in the Democrats' hands, and Labour still has slightly less than half. I think one of the many reasons as to why the Conservatives can't assume that it's all in the bag is that maybe the Labour Party will indeed squeeze the Liberal Democrat vote a bit further. And if we reckon, despite today's announcement, that the Conservative Party's basically already hit the high water mark in terms of what it can achieve, it won't be able to do a great deal about it if indeed, as a result, the Tory lead over Labour were to narrow. But one has to say at the moment, that lead still looks to be around 10 points on average. It's actually pretty much the same as it was at the beginning of the campaign. So, every bit of progress Labour has made has been matched by the Conservatives so far, and we have to wait and see whether Labour can actually do better than that or not.
So would it be fair to say that if the Lib Dems, we're going to talk about them after 2 o'clock, if the Lib Dems continue to fall away in the polls, that could embolden Remain voters who've been eyeing up both Labour and the Lib Dems, and that a weaker Lib Dem party might make them think, right, I'm a traditional Labour voter, I want to Remain, it's my opportunity, I'll stick with them.
That might be the case, but of course what's also going on are various attempts to persuade people to vote tactically against the Conservatives, and as it were, rather than simply looking at the position nationally, encouraging people to look at the positions in their constituency. And although certainly in the majority of constituencies the Conservatives might hope to win, the Labour Party is clearly going to be the second party, there will be a substantial minority in which the Liberal Democrats have got a better chance of defeating the Conservatives, and doubtless the Liberal Democrats will, in those constituencies at least, will be focusing their attention and effort in the week that's left, because in effect both certainly their hopes of being able to do rather better in terms of seats than some forecasts have been anticipating probably do now rely very much on the party's ability to squeeze the Labour vote, at least in the places where the party's still got a chance.
And are you in the mood to make any predictions at this stage, a week away?
I think one was quite enough last time, Sheila. It's very clear where we're at. I mean, if the polls are at all right, there's about a 2/3 chance, 70% chance that the Conservatives will get the overall majority they need. But the point is that the 10-point lead they currently have in the polls will be adequate if it were to be realised in the ballot boxes. But if the lead proves to be not much more than 6%, then we get into a world where there's a 50% chance of a hung parliament. And because Boris Johnson has got to get a majority, if he's going to get his withdrawal treaty through, indeed, probably if he's going to remain Prime Minister, he's not sufficiently far ahead of where he needs to be that he can assume that it's in the bag. I mean, just one simple reason. I mean, I quote the 10-point lead for the Tories in polls. That's the average figure. Now, some polls say actually the Tories are in a better position, and if they're right, frankly, there's nothing much for the Tories to worry about. But conversely, a couple of other polls there that lead 6 points, 7 points, and if they prove to be closer to the truth, then actually this is still potentially a tight election so far as Boris Johnson's future is concerned.